How do you see the current state of China-Europe relations and its impact on the global order?
We should do a lot more to improve the Chinese-European relationship. They have deteriorated somewhat in the last few years, partly due to COVID and partly due to geopolitical tensions. There's so much to be achieved if Europe and China can work together as forces for economic development, to solve the climate and environment problems, and of course to resolve some of the major conflicts of our time.
There is a growing perception that European countries have started to lack independence in their foreign policy, particularly when it comes to China and Russia, and are seen as vassal states of the United States. Could you provide some examples of this perceived lack of independence and its impact on European foreign policy decisions?
Look, I very much subscribe to the idea of the French President, Mr. Macron, who said that Europe should look for strategic autonomy, which means that Europe is a third entity. It's not China, it's not the United States, and it should look for how it can play its role. China and the US are separately the two biggest economies in the world, but if we merge Europe together, it's also a massive economy with a lot of potential contributions to the world. But of course, Europe cannot be someone else, it must be itself with its own values. And one critical area for cooperation is business, and both Europe and China can do more to allow Chinese and European companies to penetrate their markets, because competition in business is good, but also cooperation. And if we trade more, more Chinese investment in Europe, more European investment in China, that will be also a massive force for better communication.
Unfortunately, on the ground, we are seeing something different. Recently, we saw how Italy actually pulled out of China's Belt and Road Initiative. And this again raised questions about the influence of major powers on European countries. How should Europe balance its relations with China and the United States while maintaining its own strategic interests and independence?
Of course, historically, Europe is much closer to the United States. I mean, look, the main migration to the United States were Europeans who went there. And for 200 years, Europe and the United States were very, very close. But in today's world, in many areas, Europe has as much in common with China. Europe and China are main drivers of the environment progress in the world. They are main drivers of a more peaceful world. So I think Europe and China also has a lot of areas to work together, but then it must be based on two components: respect and dialogue. China will never adopt European political systems, but nor will Europe adopt the Chinese political systems. Okay. Still, we can respect each other as different civilizations. I mean, Chinese and European are maybe two of with Indian, the basic civilizations of humanity, and we need to work together, respect each other. And whenever there are disputes in business, let them be resolved by the World Trade Organizations and in dialogue.
We are also living in a very turbulent world. We are witnessing several conflicts. The Russia-Ukraine conflict was not over, and we are seeing the flare-up in the Middle East. All of these conflicts need international attention and cooperation. Is the current world order and global governance model capable enough to deal with these crises in a constructive way?
Absolutely not. I mean, look, the 19th century was the century of European imperialism, the European century. 20th century was the century of American dominance. This century is the Asian century, but it's also the multipolar century. India, Europe, Brazil, Turkey, whatever nation want to have their say. And we have two most important nations, the United States and China. We need to bring together all these nations in new forms. And particularly, we need to improve the relations between China and the US, because if the main powers of the world work together, we'll be so much stronger to solve the key issues of the day.